Welcome to Raw Radio.
And we are live.
Here we go. I feel like we've been here before.
Well, this is the first time we are recording in our new studio.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm excited. You busted your butt here to get this stuff the way it needs to be. There's been some trials and some hiccups, but this hard work here has really paid off. I'm gonna move my mug; it's in a bad spot.
So, for those of you who don't know, we used to record these shows, or this show, these episodes, remotely, and now I'm going to have this unique opportunity to hang out with Gary face to face.
Yeah, we don't spend enough time together,
right? So there might or might not be some sharp objects flying across the table. If you want to see the visual,
Jiu-Jitsu.
sort of. If you want the visual, go to our YouTube channel, and that brings me to that point actually that I want to bring up. Did you know that a lot of people don't even know that this is on YouTube?
Yeah, it's funny. Some people that I know exclusively wait for it to come up on Fridays. The episodes are released on Wednesdays. Some people wait till Friday so they can watch it on YouTube. But then a lot of other people are like, oh, I had no idea. So definitely check it out there. Check it out wherever you want to listen. If you listen in your car or whatever. But if you're home or if you're sitting in an office waiting for something, bring it up on your phone and check it out on YouTube too.
Yeah, and then we got actually pretty big YouTube channel. There's several thousand subscribers and so on. There's other videos from Roll TV and from the Academy too. So there's more than just you. I'm sorry,
more than just me.
Yeah, more than just
I hope
you.
so.
This is just more than just Gary. Okay, it's more than just Gary. But there's more than Roll Radio. There's a bunch of different content on it. So take a look. I mean, this is not a sales pitch, but a lot of people don't know. So I want to make sure that we bring that up, and we talked about that a little bit. So every episode on YouTube goes on Fridays, and on podcast they are released 2 days earlier, right? So make a note, make a mental note, set an alarm. Yeah, yep. Like Gary would say, I don't care if you listen, just download.
That's right.
That's why nobody listens.
That's why you got to do is hit the download button.
That's why nobody
After
listens
that,
to the show.
I turn the volume down, walk away. I don't care. As long as it gets those downloads.
But this is going to be interesting because now we're going to be in a studio. We're going to face each other. I mean, we're literally in person here, and we're going to talk to guests. And I think in the long-term plan, there might be opportunities to actually bring guests here in house and have some of these interactive conversations. But anyway, as you guys can tell, we take it to the next level, all thanks to you guys, because you guys listen, you ask for more. I actually got a lot of compliments this week in regards to the most recent episode with Rorion. I got a lot of messages and text messages, how surprised people were that we had him actually on the show. And I do have to say, a year ago, and it's been a year, when we started this project, I honestly, I didn't envision that we would have people like Eli Knight or Rorion Gracie or Hollis Gracie or plenty. I don't want to butcher or cut anybody out and not mention them, but there were a lot of big names that we had this on the show and having these conversations, which is very insightful. Hearing those stories is, I think, beautiful, especially for those who are passionate about art of jiu-jitsu, or just martial arts in general.
Yeah.
Right. We had some phenomenal judokas. We had Olympic medalists. We had people who have accomplished world championships from a jiu-jitsu perspective, but also, others. We even had some people who have nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. Well, they have something to do with jiu-jitsu, but their profession is not directly with jiu-jitsu. So it's an interesting variety of people that we have the opportunity to talk to. So, on that note, thanks for hanging out with me and putting up with me because, well, without you,
who, me personally?
Yeah, you personally. No, you. Well, without you, the show just would happen normally. So
it would go on. Don't worry. Don't worry. But the reason it's going on, let's get to the reason we're here. Actually,
that was
it's because of the hustle.
Redirect.
I'm good at that. But it's because of the hustle that you've put in to the Academy, to Roll TV, now to Roll Radio. And it's tying it in with Rorion. That man has hustled um, since he was a kid, and it really picked up, at least through our conversation, when he came to the United States. For the first time, getting home became troublesome for him. Listen to the episode if you want to find out why, or if you're familiar, you already know. Um, so what did he do? Instead of asking for help, he busted his ass to get back home. And the way he did it was he had to stay here longer. So what did he do? He got jobs, odd jobs. He worked in places that most people would say, that's beneath me. And then he was able to get himself back to Brazil. He loved America. He was able to get himself back to America, but did the same thing. He didn't come here. The Gracie name wasn't legendary yet. He came here and worked as he cleaned houses. He flipped burgers.
Don't tell the whole story.
Yeah. Well, I want people to understand that this guy came here and really, really hustled and busted his ass to make sure that the dreams he had of one, promoting jiu-jitsu throughout the world, but then number two is, he had the seed for the UFC for a very long time, and making that happen, 17 years after he thought about doing it, about having this competition to showcase his family and his father's art, and he hustled the whole time to make sure it happened. And look at where we are now. Arguably, he changed history, not just martial arts history, but history. There's millions of people out there doing BJJ that I think probably wouldn't be if he hadn't done what he needed to do to make the UFC happen.
Yeah, you bring out some interesting points, some valid points. I mean, arguably, whether you agree with Horion's ways, and I know there are some controversies around, that, but whether you agree with this or not, I mean, the guy changed not only face of jiu-jitsu, but arguably probably impacted, a lot of people around the world who are not in jiu-jitsu, right? I mean, just from a pay-per-view perspective, from the way how martial arts is being viewed, from the way how sponsorship's done for athletes. I mean, these are, I think, some, underestimated or not talked about topics. Without UFC, what it is today, some of these things would not happen, and I think, prior, and I'm curious what listeners think about this, but prior to UFC, I think, average Joe Schmo getting to a, a, a professional level wasn't so easy. And I think because UFC was so new and martial arts was so new on that platform, international platform, I think it gave opportunity people who would not have a chance to step into that cage.
Yeah.
Well, especially in the beginning. Now it's a little bit different. The saturation is by far higher. Getting to that level is much more difficult. But in the beginning, I think it gave a lot of people opportunity to step into the cage and test themselves. And a lot of them converted that into a full profession, either from coaching or athlete's perspective.
Well, how many people own academies now?
Absolutely.
Because of it. And, back at that time, where did a wrestler have to go? Where did they go after their college career? Some went to the Olympics, but that's a limited few. And after the Olympics, where did they go? They really didn't have any place else after that. And,
into coaching, and similar with judo, and similar was with karate, right?
Right. But how did they take their sport that they're working on? What was the next level for them?
Right.
As an athlete, and there really wasn't any place. And then boom, after the UFC and after a few changes, that things opened up, and even if they didn't make it to that stage, they had other smaller promotions popping up all over the place where they could still go test themselves and maybe make a few bucks at it and then keep elevating and moving up.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. So again, whether you agree with it or not, he might have not be the first Gracie in United States, but he definitely created a pivot point. And Robert Drysdale talks about this
Yeah.
quite a bit in his book, in the documentary, and obviously in one of our earlier episodes, where he finds creation of UFC a pivot point for jiu-jitsu itself. It's the moment where jiu-jitsu was put on a map, and we don't know what would happen if UFC wasn't created. We have no idea whether jiu-jitsu would exist in US, or would it be bigger, would it be smaller. But there's no argument that as it happened, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Yeah.
Likely I wouldn't have the profession that I have. Likely, I don't know. What would you be doing without jiu-jitsu? You have a peaceful life with your family, and I wouldn't have to
Yeah, I
sit with
wouldn't.
me in that room and
Yes,
talk about
yes.
nonsense.
I wouldn't be looking at the notifications on my phone every 30 seconds. That's for sure. But hey, I had a couple different jobs. I had a lot of jobs, but I had a couple different careers before this, and I'm sure I would still be in one of those.
Yeah.
Whichever one either was paying the best or was the least stressful or what have you. But and man, I'm a latecomer, right? I mean, I watched UFC one at George's house. Shout out to George if he listens. But
Who's George?
George is just a dude I went to high school with.
Hey,
And
George.
We watched.
What's up, George?
I think I saw every like Tyson fight at George. Like we were young dudes.
We should get George on the
pay-per-views.
show.
No, we don't need to delve into those days. But back then, I mean, like I said, we watched every big boxing match, every pay-per-view. We talked about boxing all the time. UFC came out. We watched the first few, the first four, probably. And I forgot where I was going with this because we started talking more about George than where I was going.
What?
But in those days, I had already probably done. I did a little Aikido. I had done Taekwondo and a little bit of kickboxing. Moved into Kung Fu, and had always about that time, so early mid 90s. About that time, I had always wanted to try jiu-jitsu, and for a million different excuses, I never did. So I'm a little late to the game, but yeah, I mean, it was always there, because of the work that Rorion did. If UFC never came out, I don't know how much longer it would have taken me to find it.
Yeah, and let's be clear, this is not only Rorion's thing, right? There was many other people around the world who contributed to what jiu-jitsu is today. I want to make that clear. We are not highlighting that, but it is important to say that thanks to the hustle of Rorion, it got put on the map. And something that creation of IBJJF, which was a handful of years later, and hassle of that organization and creators of it, was the next.
Well, there's always a pivot point. There's always something
right,
that
exactly.
Or a spark,
right?
That's.
But let's go back to the hustle, because I want to talk about that a little bit before we run out of time on this. Right? We talked about the hustle that took for him particularly to achieve things that he wanted to achieve, but the seed was planted many years earlier. What is it, 15 or 17 years? I don't remember.
Like that, yeah.
So I mean, almost 2 decades, right? It took him to really achieve that pivot point of success. Right. And we often find ourselves in these positions, especially on the mat in jiu-jitsu, when we're trying to achieve certain things, whether it's a position transition, under deeper understanding of the system, whatever the case is, maybe even achieving the belt. Maybe you've been at it, you've been grinding it, but you're not there yet. Sometimes I think what's really important to keep in mind that hustle is not necessarily the hard work. But hustle is doing things that we don't always like. Is doing the things that are not so, rainbow and unicorns. Okay, it's not always fun. It's not. That's the hustle, right? Anybody can show up to the academy and catch a couple of rolls and go home. Not everybody can study at home, bring it to the academy, study more, review, put yourself in the vulnerable positions, be a subject to a judgment or a critique, receive that critique, and then go back and make additional adjustments. Now that is a hustle.
Yeah,
you grind work. Yeah, you're putting work in, you're grinding, right? So sometimes that hustle takes years. It takes years before we see some of the fruits and rewards behind all the hard work. And unfortunately, I think that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people give up on jiu-jitsu, because they don't see the immediate result.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard, and jiu-jitsu is hard.
Yeah, well, it's
know?
definitely one of those things where you don't. There's very little instant gratification in jiu-jitsu. You might catch somebody who makes a mistake and you get it that way, but to become good at it, to even become mediocre at it, I think it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of work, and not just on the mat. You do have to study, review, ask a lot of questions, take privates. All that stuff is part of it. And you do have to grind it out, hustle, getting here physically, not watching the things you want to watch on TV, so you can study a little bit, whatever it takes, to make sure that your progression is headed in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I agree. How do you think this is in your case particularly? You said you're coming into jiu-jitsu much later in life. You few years into it at this point, right? Life is unfolding pretty good on the mat. What's your there was a gesture with his hand and lip and his head bubbled side to side, but
one of those,
for those of you not watching, I want to give you the visual here. But what's your hustle like?
Well, it's changed so much, right? Because I work here now, I'm coaching the kids, so it's changed a bunch. But for right now, it's being here. It's changing the way I think. It's a big part of it. I've gone from steps to concepts. So you have to change, the way you think about things, which I'm I think in the infancy of, but it's also putting myself in uncomfortable positions. I now will start, I'll be like, hey, I don't like working off my back, but I'll give it a shot, right? Because I need to, in order to get to the established positions that I do like, I'm going to probably be in compromised positions first, right? So I've got to earn that position. And that's part of the hustle that I'm in right now. And then you have all those other things of trying to get to the academy, what classes can I get to on any particular day, all that type of stuff too.
Well, it's also important to acknowledge that what is hustle for one might not be hustle for another person. It is not cookie cutter. So just because you are grinding, somebody could be grinding in a very different way.
Yeah, there's people out there at work picking up extra shifts so they can pay for their fees, or they need a new gi. So they're like, hey, I'll pick up a couple hours for you on Sunday if you want, so I can get that new gi, all that type of stuff. It's different for everybody, but you will see the fruits of your labor if you put in the work and hustle.
Yeah. So what should we say? Find your hustle?
I don't know.
Find your
hustle. I don't know. It sounds weird.
That was a good episode that you said. I don't know.
Find your hustle. I don't know.
This is why I need sharp objects here.
Bring it. Here you go. There you go. I got a pair of scissors.
There you go.
But yeah,
things just got
hustle.
violent.
Find what works for you. Stay dedicated, and it always takes anything that's worth doing. Takes work. Anything that you want takes work. So find out what works best and stick with it. That's it. That's all I got.
Let's wrap this up.
All right.
Let's continue hustling, guys.
Peace.
Later.
Thank you for listening to Raw Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.